With the 2019 federal election less than a week away, Canadians are deciding on just who to vote for. MCTV reached out to political candidates running in the Sturgeon River-Parkland riding to see what them and their parties have to offer residents of Morinville. Today in studio, I am pleased to be joined by the Christian Heritage Party of Canada candidate, Ernest Chauvet. Thanks for the time to take this interview. So, for starters, what got you interested into politics in the first place?
My interest in politics arises when I see a challenge or problem that's not being addressed, and rather than sit back on the side, how can I get involved and address the question? So in this case of the Christian Heritage Party, I had very much of a concern of the impact of abortion on women and how it affects them and how often they're pressurized to have an abortion through the boyfriends or the parents, and after the fact, after they've had the abortions, they're the ones who have to deal with it thereafter. So it was an opportunity to bring forth that point.
Perfect. So as students, we have vested interest in how national decisions will affect our opportunities and success for our futures. How will your party engage and address the interest of young Canadians?
I think you address two different ways, two different methods. One is we are concerned with the debt. The debt really is spending today, us, the older people, we spend what is comfortable for us, what makes life easier for us, and we say the younger people will have to pay for it. There's a point where you can't do that. You've got to address the debt, you've got to address the deficits so that it doesn't fall on their shoulders. We know that in Europe, in Spain, for example, I have a daughter and grandchildren there, unemployment is 25%. Part of that came about as a result that built up over debt. The other question is you need to look into ways of making it more easier for students to go to post-secondary education. And to find ways to facilitate that through the creation of jobs or to assist them, at least make them reasonable, keep that under check, the expenses for post-secondary education especially.
Nice. So despite the fact that Canada's unemployment is at its lowest rate in 43 years, Alberta's oil and gas sector is struggling. So how will your party address the needs of Alberta's economic woes?
Well, you always got to build on what you have. And one thing we do have is natural resources. So I think within Alberta here, the pipelines will be a big factor, but when you can change from the derivatives from oil and gas, and for example, making of plastics and so forth, all those kinds of factories that can do that transition helps to build the Alberta economy and helps the Canadian economy. So we're very, very much in favor of the secondary benefits of the oil industry. And at the same time, encourage that to go across Canada. We're very much in favor of the Trans-Canada pipeline going across and every province benefiting from having factories and industries along the way as they go down. So that's something we definitely have to look at. The other question is with the pipelines, it's also a possibility, as we have the pipelines built, it'll free up rail so that the farmers can ship their grain to market easier, because right now the shipping of oil and gas, oil, is such that farmers are left behind because the rail companies get less money for shipping grain than they do for shipping oil.
Interesting. Now, can Canada transform its energy sector while taking meaningful action to protect the environment as well?
Well, I think you have to, I also believe that within the oil industry, within the next few years, I personally believe from research I have done that we're able to take the oil out of the sands at half the cost and without the environmental effect, without the use of water and all the carbon dioxide as being released from that transaction. So I believe that. So that's one way we can advance the whole carbon question. Mm-hmm. If we can start extracting the oil out of the sands with less, in a more friendly manner, I think that's important. And that addresses the climate concerns at the same time. And then the proceeds from that again goes to provide different forms of energy can be produced from that. And I'm very much open, and our party is very much open to even looking into nuclear energy in the future. I think it's not in Europe, most of the European countries use nuclear energy. And here there's not much talk about it, but it's an option that needs to be considered.
Yes, definitely. So one of the biggest issues across the country is healthcare. whether it's the cost on drugs, wait times, or the opioid crisis. What does your party plan to do about that?
That's a loaded question. There are lots of different parts in that.
Yes.
For sure, we need to move towards pharmacare. We believe there needs to be an increase of cooperation between naturopathic medicine and the medicine we're using in the hospitals now. Because there's not an openness to more natural means of treating disease, we're just paying the extra cost. And I think many remedies could be done if cooperation could take place. That's really federal jurisdiction, to bring the different forms, different ways of dealing with health together and putting pressure on them to find solutions, and what works we use. It's way cheaper if we could move into the natural methods of healing versus what we're using presently. So pharmaceutical, we move to move in that area, and then we just got to start progress as the budget allows. On the opium questions, it's difficult. Lots of the drug challenges, and again, as you know, I worked 15 years with young people and young adults between 18 to 25, and that over and above my years of teaching. So behind the opium crisis, people are struggling with inner challenges, inner wounds. And what happens, drug becomes a way of escaping that for a period of time. It's similar to students in school. You don't always feel like working on any given day in class. Some days you don't feel like it. But if you take the easy way now, things get harder later. Opiums were the same way. If you take the easy way in the struggles you're going through now, afterwards it makes greater problems, especially in the area of relationships. So we have to move to more treatment centers. Treatment centers have to be open to spiritual approaches. I don't care if people want to use a Christian approach, Jewish, Native approach, needs to be incorporated into treatment styles. And you can have some straight secular ones also. If it's, the effectiveness changes if you just go straight secular as a whole, but people should be offered that option. It costs $118,000 for somebody in jail in a high security prison. $78,000 most people in jail in a year, and $58,000 on low security. $58,000, that's low security. There's no money available for treatment centers, for people to deal with the roots of their issues, where the pain's coming from, how to bring forgiveness into a situation where they've been unjustly violated, and to bring forgiveness there, so that the need for that the opiums and the drugs is released. Just having sites does not deal with that problem. They can have their drugs, maybe it reduces crime, but it does not rebuild relationships. So I think in response to that one is the treatment centers, unless they're tied in to rehabilitation centers, or they don't deal with the root, it doesn't really help the individual in the long term. It just reduces crime in our society.
Ah, that was definitely a loaded question and a loaded answer. On to the next one. So despite these far-reaching national and provincial issues, what do you feel is the single biggest issue for residents of the Sturgeon River-Parkland riding, and how will you and your party address that?
We do have oil being refined, and we do have secondary refineries coming out of that, and CO2 capture and so forth. We need to continue that route. That has to be continued because we're directly related to the energy factor. So what's taking place, we continue encouraging the process of having the pipeline come through, increasing, moving out of using the rail system to free up for the farmers, because the farmers are concerned. It's hardly been discussed at all in this election. And in reality, farmers are in a crisis too right now. This year there's extra cost of drying their grain, plus even getting it off. And it's as if they're non-existent. So for sure by looking to other means of shipping the oil, then we're freeing up to help it easier for the farmers. We have to look at some of that international stuff with China, like with canola. That has to be a tremendous energy. If we can't get the market there, we have to develop other ones. Now, I know all governments will try to do that, but we support any efforts to move in that direction. We can't say, if we're sincere and honest, that the Liberals or the Conservatives or the other parties would not want to deal with it. They will, but we have to keep it going. So how it is, we keep running the track. We just have to get those things through, the pipelines through, encourage other industry to invest here for refineries and so forth, and just keep plugging away in that direction.
Yeah, sounds good. So now we have a series of 7 rapid-fire questions, so the voters can get to know you on more of a personal level. So when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I just enjoyed farming. I come from farm background, and I'm a farmer, and to pay my way through university, I was a beekeeper. Sweetest job around.
I love that. What was the first film you ever remember seeing in a theater?
Man for All Seasons.
Nice. What is your favorite thing to do when you have downtime?
Now? I do like sports. I love basketball, watching basketball and hockey on TV. That's probably what I enjoy to do. I also love to read, and lots of personal growth books. Because I'm a teacher, when I read, I also make notes. So this, if I ever have to teach on people on personal growth, I've got my notes already.
Yep.
So reading, I really enjoy reading, and I do listen to sports.
That's exciting. What musician is always on your playlist?
I don't listen to music.
No music.
I do, but not specifically.
Yeah.
In the past, I really enjoy people like Roger Whittaker, Nana Mouskouri. So some of those French singers, I really enjoyed.
That's nice. What is your go-to comfort food?
I love cherry pie, but then if I'm snacking, I'll just whatever. When I'm watching TV, I'll take snacks. They're all good.
Yep, food is definitely yummy. What TV series are you binge watching at the moment? Or
The Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Nice. So we've got this series, so we're just going through them, yeah.
Nice. And then finally, last one. If you could travel anywhere on the planet, where would you go?
I love Europe. I love history. So I've been to France, Italy, different places in Europe. I'd probably go back. But, you know, like for the present, for the same dollar value, I presently have chosen to go to Haiti instead of those countries where I had, in a sense of investing the money I put aside for traveling. Right now is being spent to go work with the poor in Haiti.
That's amazing. So finally, our last question is, what separates you from the other candidates, and why should voters support you and your party on election day?
We are the only party that it brings up the question of the impact of abortion on women. We feel there needs to be a discussion on that. When the government says there is no restriction right up till birth, that's telling all women that should you have an abortion, there's no consequences on them. And from research, not on a pro-life perspective, on the impact of women, abortion on women, the increase in premature birth, the cancer, depression, just to name some of those consequences, is never brought forth. So in reality, women are not even being given an informed choice. And the government is saying, you don't need an informed choice, everything is okay, there's no consequences. And there's no stats, all the people, talk about the people, pro-choice people and so forth, there's no stats of how many women are having their abortions due to the pressure from their boyfriends. And from old stats, over 80% of the couples break up within a year after the abortion. So they're doing it on behalf of the boyfriend, which has all to gain, because he won't have to give child support. She makes the choice, partly within that relations. She leaves. Later on, she has a child. She goes through depression and regret. She's all alone. She has no one to turn to, and the government is not there to provide them support. We're the only party that will address that. It's a hidden issue. We're the only one to do. That's the only one. That's what separates us from the other ones. The rest, you know, we believe in moving toward the balanced budget as soon as we can. We're in favor of industry. We do need to address, you know, the climate change. We can't ignore those issues. You know, there's many others we share with some of the other parties. Sometimes one, sometimes the other. But that one makes us apart from the other ones.
Wow. Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you for
Thank you, Skylar.
this interview. Joining us again on our next installment when Davina Bolin sits down with Sturgeon River-Parkland candidate for the People's Party of Canada, Tyler Beauchamp. And remember, regardless of what party you're supporting, please make sure to get out and vote on Monday, October 21st.